A poor waitress mistook him for a backpacker, not knowing he was the millionaire owner of the cafe. And what he did next surprised everyone. Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us which city you are watching from. And at the end, do not forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The door of Café Magnifique opened, and every head turned at the same time. A man had just walked in, completely soaked by the New York rain. A worn-out denim jacket dripping water onto the floor, a faded t-shirt stuck to his body, cargo pants with mud stains, and sneakers that looked like they had crossed the entire country on foot. An old backpack hung from his shoulders, so worn it seemed ready to fall apart. His unshaven face completed the look of someone who definitely did not belong in that place. Silence fell instantly. Clients in Italian suits stopped mid-conversation. Women in high heels and designer bags widened their eyes. An executive pulled his briefcase closer, as if the stranger might steal it at any moment. The man paused at the entrance, looking around with an unreadable expression. Water ran from his dark hair, forming a small puddle at his feet. Sophie Bennett was behind the counter, cleaning the espresso machine, when she noticed the movement. She lifted her eyes and saw the soaked man, clearly out of place in that sophisticated environment where each cup of coffee cost as much as a full meal anywhere else. And she also saw the looks. Judgmental looks. Disdainful looks. Looks from people who were certain that man could not afford even a glass of water. Sophie knew those looks well. She had been on the receiving end more times than she cared to remember. Without thinking twice, she dropped the cloth she was holding and walked quickly toward the stranger. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from a quiet anger toward all that hypocrisy. "Hi," she said with a warm smile as she approached him. "Are you all right? Are you looking for someone?" The man blinked, surprised. He expected to be thrown out, not greeted with kindness. I just wanted a place to get out of the rain," he answered in a rough voice. "And maybe a coffee, if it's not a problem." Sophie felt her heart tighten. There was something in his voice. A genuine humility that completely contrasted with the arrogance that filled that cafe every day. "Of course it's not a problem," she said cheerfully, taking his arm naturally. "Come on, I'll get you a comfortable table." She guided him to a quiet corner table, away from the staring eyes. The man sat down slowly, still processing such an unexpected reception. "Make yourself comfortable, okay?" Sophie said, pulling a small order pad from her apron pocket. "Our cappuccino is wonderful. I'll bring you a hot one so you can warm up. And you know what? This one is on me." "No, you don't have to," he started to protest. "I know I don't have to," Sophie interrupted with a playful smile. "But I want to. No one should stay cold and hungry on a day like this. Let me take care of you, all right?" Before he could answer, Sophie had already disappeared into the kitchen. The man sat there, looking around. He noticed people still watching him, but he didn't care. His attention was completely on that waitress with bright eyes and an honest smile. Sophie returned a few minutes later with a tray. A steaming cappuccino, a generous slice of apple pie with melting ice cream on top, and a folded napkin. "Here you go," she said, placing everything on the table carefully. "The best cappuccino in New York, if I may brag a little." While arranging the plates, Sophie did something she hadn't planned. Acting on impulse, she quietly took $5 from her own pocket and placed the bill under the dessert plate, in a way he could take it without anyone else noticing. "Hey," she said softly, leaning a bit closer. "It's not much, but use this to eat something decent later, all right? There's a place 2 blocks from here that makes great, inexpensive sandwiches. You look like you could use a good meal." The man looked at the $5 bill. Then he looked at Sophie. And something changed completely in his expression. In his eyes there was a deep emotion Sophie couldn't identify. It looked like surprise, gratitude, and something else. Something that made his eyes darken in an intense way. "You didn't have to do that," he said, his voice unsteady. "I know," Sophie said with simple honesty. "But look, we're all in this world together, you know? Sometimes all we need is someone who cares, even if it's just a little." She offered her hand with a smile. "My name is Sophie, by the way, Sophie Bennett, and you can come here whenever you want. All right? Don't mind those judgmental looks. They don't know anything." The man shook her hand, feeling the warmth and steadiness of her grip. "Tyler," he said simply. My name is Tyler. Nice to meet you, Tyler, Sophie said sincerely. Now enjoy your coffee before it gets cold. And if you need anything, just call me. She gave him a friendly wink and went back to the counter where other customers were already calling her impatiently. Tyler stayed there, holding the $5 bill between his fingers. He looked at the waitress moving through the room with lightness, treating every person with the same genuine care, no matter who they were. What Sophie Bennett didn't know, she had no idea, was that the backpacker she had just defended was actually Tyler Ashford, the billionaire owner of that entire cafe, the man behind the Café Magnifique empire that had spread across 12 states. Tyler had come in disguise for exactly this reason, to find out who, in that world of appearances, still had a real heart, who would treat a stranger well even when he had nothing to offer but gratitude. And he had just found the answer. Sitting at that table, sipping the best cappuccino he had ever tasted. Not because of the flavor, but because of the humanity that came with it, Tyler Ashford smiled. A genuine smile he had not given in years. And in that moment, something inside him changed forever. Tyler took the last sip of the cappuccino and felt the warm liquid go down his throat. It was delicious, but it wasn't the taste of the coffee that kept him sitting there. It was the waitress with the bright smile moving between the tables with contagious energy. Sophie was helping a table of executives when one of them snapped his fingers in the air, calling her as if calling a dog. Tyler saw her jaw tighten for a second, but her smile stayed in place. "Yes, sir?" she asked politely. "This coffee is cold. Bring me another one. And this time, try not to take forever," the man said without even looking at her, his eyes glued to his phone. "Of course, I'll bring it right away," Sophie answered, picking up the cup. As she walked past Tyler's table, he noticed her rolling her eyes discreetly and whispering under her breath, "Try not to take forever." As if I had magical teleportation powers. Next up, Hogwarts, school for wizard waitresses. Tyler almost choked on the last sip of coffee, trying not to laugh. Sophie noticed and came back to his table, leaning a little with a conspiratorial smile. "Sorry, did you hear that?" she asked with fake innocence. "Sometimes I forget I think out loud." "I did hear it," Tyler replied, his eyes bright with amusement. "And I completely agree. Hogwarts should offer that course, right?" Sophie laughed. "Spells for handling impossible customers, advanced level. I would be the best student in class." She was about to leave when Tyler, on impulse, lightly touched her wrist. "Wait, do you work here for a long time?" Sophie blinked, surprised by the gentle touch, but she didn't move away. 3 years, she replied. "Why?" "Just curious." Tyler released her wrist quickly, as if he had touched something hot. "You seem different. From the others, I mean." "Different how?" Sophie crossed her arms, amused. "Like an alien?" "Because my roommate has accused me of that a few times. Different in a good way." Tyler smiled. "You treat people honestly, you don't pretend." Sophie stayed quiet for a moment, observing that man in worn-out clothes and intelligent eyes. There was something about him that didn't fit. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, it was almost as if he were playing a role. "Well, life is already hard enough for us to be fake, don't you think?" she finally said. "I'd rather be myself and get hurt than pretend to be someone else." Before Tyler could answer, a sharp voice filled the air. Miss, this is unacceptable," Sophie sighed dramatically. "And here we go again," she murmured, winking at Tyler. "I'll be right back. Don't run away, okay?" Tyler watched as Sophie walked toward a middle-aged woman covered in jewelry, who was pointing furiously at a slice of cake. "I asked for no sugar." "No sugar," the woman practically shouted. "Do you have any idea how many calories this has?" Sophie looked at the cake, then at the woman, and Tyler could swear he saw the waitress count to 10 in her head before answering. "You're right. I apologize. I'll replace it right away," she said with saint-like patience. "May I suggest our sugar-free lemon pie? It's light and delicious." "No, I want the same cake, but without sugar," the woman yelled. Sophie kept her smile steady, but Tyler noticed she was gripping the tray so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "I understand completely. I'll be right back." When she passed by Tyler again, she whispered without looking directly at him. "Deep breath. Count to 10. Remember that jail is not worth it." Tyler burst into a genuine laugh that made several heads turn. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed like that. Sophie came back a few minutes later with the sugar-free cake, which Tyler was sure was the exact same cake, just on a different plate. The customer tasted it, made a face of approval, and dismissed Sophie with a wave of her hand. When she finally had a few free minutes, Sophie sat down in the chair across from Tyler, exhausted. "Sorry, I know I shouldn't be sitting here, but my feet are begging for mercy," she said, discreetly taking off one shoe under the table. "Oh, that is freedom. You work hard," Tyler observed. "I work enough to pay the bills," Sophie shrugged. "But it's not forever. I have a plan." "What kind of plan?" Sophie's eyes lit up in a way that made Tyler's heart skip a beat. "I'm going to open my own bookstore cafe," she said, her voice full of dreams. "A place where people can read, have a good cup of coffee, and no one will be judged for wearing sandals or high heels. It'll be cozy, you know? With comfortable armchairs, soft music, and an honest menu that doesn't charge $15 for a coffee that costs $2 to make." Tyler leaned forward, genuinely interested. "That sounds amazing." "It does, right?" Sophie sighed. "I just need to save about $50,000 first. At the pace I'm going, I should get there around the year 2095. "Why not take a loan?" Sophie laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "Because banks don't lend money to waitresses with a credit history thinner than tissue paper," she said with blunt honesty. "But that's okay. I'll get there, one day at a time." Tyler stayed quiet, observing this woman who had so much to give and so little to start with. An idea began to form in his mind. "And you?" Sophie asked, changing the subject. "What brings you to New York? Are you traveling?" Tyler hesitated. It was the perfect moment to reveal who he really was. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the fear of seeing that genuine smile turn into something fake. Maybe it was the rare pleasure of being treated like an ordinary person. "I just came into some money," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Won the lottery. Not a lot, but enough to change my life." "Really?" Sophie widened her eyes. "That's amazing. How much?" "A few $100,000. Tyler lied, feeling guilty. "Wow." Sophie tapped the table, excited. "That's fantastic. And what are you going to do with the money?" "I haven't decided yet." Tyler scratched his beard. "To be honest, I'm not sure how to act now. I mean, a week ago I had, well, not much. And now I have money, but I have no idea how the world of rich people works." Sophie looked at him for a long moment, and then a playful smile formed on her lips. "You know what? I think I can help you with that." "You?" "Yes, me." Sophie brightened. "Look, I've worked in a place full of rich people for 3 years. I've learned all the tricks. How they behave, how they choose wine, how they pretend to know what they're talking about when they clearly don't. I can teach you." Tyler could hardly believe his luck. There she was, offering exactly the kind of situation he had been looking for. A chance to understand how ordinary people saw his world. "You would do that?" "Of course." Sophie extended her hand. "It'll be fun. Like a Pygmalion project, but reversed. Or maybe the right way. Anyway, I'll turn you from a lucky backpacker into a lucky backpacker who knows how to use a fish fork." Tyler shook her hand, laughing. "Deal." "Great, I finish my shift in 2 hours," Sophie said, standing up and slipping her shoe back on with a grimace. "I'll meet you outside, okay? We can start with the basics. How to order food without looking like you're having a heart attack when you see the price." "Perfect." Sophie started to walk away, then turned back. "And Tyler, thank you." "For what?" "For being real," she said simply. "It's rare around here." And with that, she disappeared among the tables, leaving Tyler sitting there, holding the $5 she had given him and wondering what exactly he had just gotten himself into. But for the first time in years, he was excited to find out. 2 hours later, Sophie walked out the back door of Café Magnifique, trading her spotless uniform for worn jeans and a simple blouse. She found Tyler waiting on the sidewalk, still in the same soaked clothes, but now with a more relaxed expression. "You really waited," Sophie said, surprised and happy at the same time. "Of course I waited," Tyler replied. "It's not every day someone offers to teach me how to be, what did you call it? A backpacker who knows how to use a fish fork?" Sophie laughed, tossing her bag over her shoulder. "Exactly, and the first lesson starts now. Come with me." She began walking down the sidewalk with determined steps, and Tyler followed her, curious. "Where are we going?" "To a very important place," Sophie answered with a mysterious tone. "The real heart of New York. 15 minutes later, Tyler found himself inside a second-hand department store, surrounded by racks of clothes piled in messy rows. "Okay, lesson number 1, Sophie said, turning to him with comical seriousness. "If you want to blend in with rich people, you at least need to look like you have a place to sleep. Those clothes of yours are crying for help." Tyler looked down at his worn clothes and had to bite his lip to keep from laughing. If she only knew he had a closet the size of her entire apartment. "But I don't have much money to spend," Tyler lied, staying in character. "Relax." Sophie waved her hand dismissively. "This is a thrift store. You can find good clothes here for next to nothing. Look at this." She pulled a light blue dress shirt from a rack and held it up in front of him. "Perfect. And look, it's only missing one button. Nothing a needle and thread can't fix." $10. Tyler took the shirt, examining it. It was good quality, probably an expensive brand someone had donated. Ironic that he, a man with a fortune, was being taken shopping for used clothes. "And you need decent pants too," Sophie continued, already diving between the racks. "No more cargo pants with mud stains." "Ah, found it." She held up a pair of dark jeans, practically new. "Try these on. The fitting room is over there in the corner." 20 minutes later, Tyler walked out wearing the blue shirt and jeans. Sophie looked him up and down, biting her lip thoughtfully. Much better. Now you look like a civilized human." She circled him like a general inspecting a soldier. "Just missing one thing." "What?" Sophie pointed at his scruffy beard. "That needs a trim, but I don't do beard work." "That's on you. I can handle that," Tyler said, touching his chin. "Great." Sophie clapped her hands. "Now let's pay for all this and move on to lesson number 2. At the register, Tyler pulled a $100 bill from his wallet. Sophie's eyes widened. Hey, she pushed his hand back. "Put that money away. You need to learn how to save." "But." "No but." Sophie was already counting coins from her own bag. $22 total. "I'll lend it to you, and you can pay me back whenever you can, okay?" Tyler tried to protest, but she had already handed the money to the cashier. He stood there holding the clothes, feeling something strange in his chest. When was the last time someone had cared about him like that? "Thank you," he said softly. "You're welcome," Sophie smiled. "Now, next stop, lunch, and you're going to learn the art of using discount coupons." Tyler blinked. "Discount coupons?" "Oh, my friend." Sophie hooked her arm through his naturally. "You have a lot to learn about surviving in this concrete jungle." They walked to a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. The place was tiny, with only 8 tables, but the smell coming from the kitchen was mouth-watering. "This is Bella Pasta," Sophie said as they walked in. "The owner, Mrs. Giulietta, makes the best lasagna in New York, and on Tuesdays there's a 20% discount if you show this coupon right here." She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her bag and waved it proudly. "You collect coupons?" Tyler asked, genuinely fascinated. "I collect, organize, and use them religiously," Sophie replied with pride. "Last month, I saved $73 just on coupons. That covers my electric bill." They sat at a table near the window. An Italian woman with gray hair and a warm smile came over. "Sophie, my dear." Mrs. Giulietta kissed Sophie on both cheeks. "It's been so long, and who is this handsome young man?" "This is Tyler, Mrs. G," Sophie said. "A new friend. Tyler, this is the best cook in all of New York." "Oh, you've always been my favorite," Mrs. Giulietta said with a loving pat on Sophie's shoulder. "The usual for you?" "Yes, please. And for him, too." When Mrs. Giulietta stepped away, Tyler leaned over the table. "What's the usual?" "Lasagna, salad, and garlic bread," Sophie replied. "Trust me, you're gonna love it." And she was right. When the food arrived, Tyler tasted the lasagna and had to control himself not to groan out loud. It was infinitely better than anything served in the 5-star restaurants he usually went to. "Good, right?" Sophie said with her mouth full, completely unbothered. "Amazing," Tyler admitted. "Okay, now pay attention." Sophie wiped her mouth with a napkin. Lesson number 3, how to behave at a fancy dinner. She picked up her fork and knife, holding them in an exaggerated, pompous way. "First, you never ever hold your fork like this," she demonstrated, gripping the fork with a closed fist like a child. "Rich people faint at the sight of this." Tyler laughed. "And how do you hold it then?" "Like this." Sophie adjusted her grip, light and elegant. "Gently, as if you're holding a feather." And when you cut the meat, you don't saw it like you're cutting wood. You make smooth movements. She demonstrated slicing the lasagna with exaggerated elegance, her nose in the air. And always, always chew with your mouth closed, because no one wants to watch your food having a party in there. Tyler was laughing so hard he almost choked. "You're a great teacher." "I know," Sophie said, giving a seated bow. "And there's more. When someone offers you wine, you can't just say whatever. You have to pretend you understand." "And how do you do that?" Sophie picked up her water glass and swirled it delicately as if it were wine. "First, you swirl it like this, lift your chin a little, look serious," she frowned dramatically. "Then you smell it. Make a thoughtful face, and say something completely meaningless like woody notes with a hint of wild cherry." "Wild cherry?" Tyler repeated, laughing. "No one knows what that means." Sophie laughed too. "But it works every time. Rich people love talking about things no one understands. They spent the next hour eating, laughing, and sharing stories. Sophie talked about the most absurd customers at Café Magnifique, and Tyler, careful not to reveal too much, made up stories about strange jobs he supposedly had before the lottery. When they finished, Sophie showed the coupon to Mrs. Julieta, who applied the discount with a smile. "See?" Sophie said as they walked out. "We saved $8.50. That's a week of coffee." Tyler looked at this woman who was genuinely happy to save less than $10 and felt something shift inside him. In his world, $8 meant nothing. It wouldn't even pay the valet. But for Sophie, it meant a week of coffee. A week of small joys. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" "For showing me all this." Tyler motioned vaguely around them. "It's different. A good different." Sophie smiled, and in that moment, with the afternoon sun lighting her face, Tyler thought he had never seen anything more beautiful. "Life is about the small things, Tyler," she said, stuffing her hands into her pockets. "Rich people forget that. They get so worried about their $1,000 wine glasses that they forget happiness can cost $8.50. She started walking down the sidewalk, and Tyler followed, realizing he was completely taken by her, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't want the day to end. In the days that followed, Tyler and Sophie became inseparable. Every morning, after her shift at Café Magnifique, they met for more etiquette lessons for the newly rich, as Sophie liked to call them. The next morning, Sophie showed up at the cheap hotel where Tyler said he was staying, carrying a mysterious bag. "Good morning, student," she said cheerfully when he opened the door. "Today is advanced level day. How to buy food without spending a fortune." Tyler, freshly shaved and wearing the thrift store clothes, smiled. "I'm ready, teacher." "Great, because we're going to my favorite place in the world." Sophie made a dramatic gesture. "The supermarket." Half an hour later, Tyler found himself pushing a rusty shopping cart down the narrow aisles of a neighborhood market. Sophie walked beside him, grabbing items off the shelves with the precision of a surgeon. "Okay, pay attention," she said, picking up 2 cans of tomatoes. "This one costs $3.50. This one, the store brand, costs $1.90. Which one do you think I'm choosing?" "The cheaper one." "Exactly." Sophie tossed the can into the cart. "Because in the end, a tomato is a tomato. Doesn't matter if the label is pretty." Tyler watched in fascination as she moved through the aisles, comparing prices, checking expiration dates, and occasionally making hilarious comments about over-the-top products. "Look at this." She lifted a box of breakfast cereal with a smiling bear on the front. Premium organic golden quinoa cereal. $12. $12. For a handful of grains that probably came from the same place as that $2 box over there. "But maybe it's healthier," Tyler suggested, trying not to laugh. "Healthy is not going hungry because you spent all your money on Happy Bear cereal." Sophie shot back, putting the box back. "Important lesson. Marketing is the art of making you pay more for less." In the pasta aisle, she stopped in front of a giant stack of spaghetti. Now, if you go to a fancy restaurant and order carbonara, they'll charge you like $30. Sophie grabbed a package of pasta. "But this pack? $1.20. Eggs? $2.50. Bacon? $4. Total, $7.70. You can make carbonara for 4 people and still have change left." "You know how to cook?" Tyler asked. "I know enough to survive." Sophie shrugged. "When you live alone and don't make much, you learn fast or become best friends with takeout." She kept loading the cart with practical, inexpensive items, and Tyler noticed she calculated every cent in her head. At the checkout, Sophie pulled a handful of coupons from a wrinkled envelope. "I always keep these," she explained, handing them to the cashier. "Every penny saved is a penny closer to my bookstore cafe fund." The total came to $42, but with the coupons, it dropped to $36. "I saved $6. Sophie celebrated as if she had actually won the lottery. "That's enough to buy a used book at Saturday's fair." Leaving the store, she turned to Tyler with a mischievous smile. "Now comes the best part. I'm going to teach you how to cook." "Wait, what?" "You heard me," Sophie said, already walking toward her apartment. "Buying is pointless if you can't cook. We're going to make a meal fit for a king on a peasant budget." Sophie's apartment was tiny, a cramped studio on the third floor of a building with no elevator. The kitchen was the size of a closet, but she moved around it effortlessly. "Welcome to my palace," she said jokingly, dropping the grocery bags on the counter. "It's not much, but it's mine." Tyler looked around. Peeling walls, old furniture, but everything spotless and organized. There were plants in the window, stacks of books in every corner, and a collage of photos covering part of a wall. "It's cozy," he said honestly. "You're a terrible liar," Sophie laughed. "But thank you. Now, let's get to work." She tied on an apron and tossed another one to Tyler. First cooking lesson. Authentic carbonara, real Italian, not that stuff with cream restaurants serve. For the next hour, Sophie commanded the kitchen like a general. She taught Tyler how to cook the pasta perfectly, fry the bacon until crisp, mix the eggs with grated cheese. No, she said when Tyler almost poured the eggs into the hot pan. "You're about to make spaghetti omelet. First take it off the heat, then mix." "You're pretty bossy in the kitchen," Tyler said, amused. "Bossy? No. Strict teacher," Sophie corrected, tasting the sauce. Perfect. Here, try it." She lifted the fork to his mouth and Tyler felt his heart skip at the intimate gesture. The flavor was incredible. "It's great," he said, looking straight into her eyes. Sophie held his gaze for a second longer than necessary, then quickly turned away, pretending to look for plates in a cabinet. "Well, now let's serve it like the fancy folks do," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. They plated the carbonara with care, and Sophie lit a candle in the center of the tiny table. "There, $50 dinner for $7.70, she announced proudly. They sat across from each other, and Tyler tasted the carbonara they had made together. It was simple, homemade, and absolutely delicious. "This is better than any fancy restaurant," he said honestly. "That's because it was made with love," Sophie replied, then widened her eyes. "I mean, with care, and proper Italian technique." Tyler smiled, finding her nervousness adorable. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a moment. "Sure. Why do you do all this?" Tyler gestured vaguely. "Teaching me. Helping me. You barely know me." Sophie set down her fork, thoughtful. "You know, a few months ago I was in a really bad place," she began. "I had lost my previous job, was about to be evicted, didn't even have money for the subway, and one day, a lady on the bus saw that I was crying. She didn't know me at all, but she gave me $20 and said, 'Pass it forward when you can.'" She looked at Tyler with a soft smile. "So that's it, I'm passing it forward. Besides," she added, slipping back into her playful tone, "you're an exceptional student. You're almost ready to blend into the world of the rich." "Almost?" Tyler pretended to be offended. "Well, you still need to work on your posture." Sophie stood up and walked around him. "Rich people walk differently. Like this, look." She lifted her chin and strutted through the tiny kitchen with exaggerated steps, shoulders back as if she were on a runway. "Look at me, I'm important. My perfume costs more than your rent," she said in a pompous voice. Tyler burst out laughing. "They really walk like that? I swear." Sophie sat back down, laughing too. Especially the socialites. It's like they swallowed a broomstick. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, laughing, and cleaning the kitchen together. Tyler dried the dishes while Sophie washed them, and the simple domesticity of the moment made his chest tighten. As it grew dark, Tyler realized he had to go, but he didn't want to. "Thank you for today," he said at the door. "It was special." "You're welcome." Sophie smiled. "Same time tomorrow? I still need to teach you about supermarket wines that look expensive but cost $5. Wouldn't miss it." Going down the building's stairs, Tyler called his personal assistant. "Mr. Ashford." The voice on the other end answered immediately. Any updates? Cancel all my appointments next week, Tyler said. I have something more important to do. And for the first time in years, he meant it. The next morning, Sophie woke up to her alarm ringing insistently. She turned it off and lay still for a moment, a silly smile on her face. In the past few days, she had caught herself thinking about Tyler more often than she wanted to admit. She shook her head, chasing the thoughts away. Focus, Sophie, she told herself. He's just a friend you're helping, nothing more. But when she got dressed for work, she chose her favorite blouse and put on lipstick for the first time in weeks. At Café Magnifique, the day was busy as usual. Sophie served tables, took orders, and smiled politely at customers who barely looked at her. During a quick break, she grabbed her phone and saw a message from Tyler. Good morning, teacher. Ready for the next lesson. What time do you finish? Sophie typed fast. At 3. Meet you at the corner? The reply came almost instantly. I'll be there, hungry for knowledge and for real food. She laughed to herself and slipped her phone back into her apron pocket. Someone's happy today, commented Jessica, another waitress passing by with a full tray. I'm just having a good week, Sophie replied, trying to sound casual. Sure you are, Jessica winked. Does it have anything to do with that guy you defended the other day, the backpacker? Maybe. Sophie Bennett, you're blushing. Jessica nudged her playfully. Spill it. Who is he? Just a friend, Sophie insisted. I'm helping him adjust to some things. Right. Friend. Jessica made air quotes. The way you were looking at him didn't look very friendly. Before Sophie could answer, Richard appeared, clapping his hands. Ladies, less talking, more working. We have customers waiting. 3 o'clock couldn't come fast enough. When her shift finally ended, Sophie practically ran to change clothes. She found Tyler waiting on the corner, wearing his thrift store outfit and smiling in a way that made her stomach flip. Ready for today's adventure? He asked. Always, Sophie said brightly. Today we're going somewhere special. They took the subway to an older part of Manhattan. Sophie led him through narrow streets until they reached a small shop with a faded sign, Wines & Co. This, Sophie announced dramatically, is New York's best-kept secret. Inside, an older man with white hair and thick glasses greeted them from behind the counter. Sophie, my favorite girl, he said in a strong Italian accent. Hi, Mr. Benedetti, Sophie greeted him warmly. Brought a student today. Ah, yes? Mr. Benedetti looked Tyler over with interest. Want to learn about wine? I'm in her hands, Tyler replied. Then you're in good hands, Mr. Benedetti nodded. Sophie knows more about wine than half the sommeliers in fancy restaurants. Sophie blushed slightly. Don't exaggerate, Mr. B. I just picked up a few tricks. Tricks nothing, the man protested. You have natural talent. Sophie took Tyler by the arm and led him to the shelves. Okay, pay attention, she began. First thing you need to know, high price doesn't mean quality. This one, for example. She picked up a simple bottle with a plain label. $6.90. Portuguese wine, Touriga Nacional grape. In a fancy restaurant, they'd sell it for at least $40, but here, less than $7. How do you know it's good? Ah, here's the trick. Sophie turned the bottle around. First, you check the vintage. This one is 2019, an excellent year for Portuguese wines. Second, you read the description. Notes of red fruit, soft tannins. That means it's tasty and easy to drink. Tyler took the bottle, impressed. And how did you learn all this? Mr. Benedetti taught me, Sophie said. When I started working at Café Magnifique, I didn't know anything about wine. I got nervous every time someone ordered. So I started coming here, asking questions, and he taught me everything. She's my best student. Mr. Benedetti shouted from the counter. Sophie continued the lesson, showing different bottles, explaining regions, grapes, pairings. Tyler watched her, fascinated, not so much by the wine but by the passion in her voice. Now the cherry on top. Sophie picked up a bottle of sparkling wine. This one costs $9. In a restaurant, they'd charge $80. And you know why? Because it has champagne on the label? No. Real champagne only comes from the Champagne region in France. This is an Italian Prosecco, but it's just as delicious. You should teach this stuff, Tyler said sincerely. Someday, in my bookstore cafe, I'm going to have a section about affordable wines, Sophie said, her eyes shining. I want to teach people that you don't need to spend a fortune to drink something good. They bought 3 bottles, all Sophie's recommendations totaling $22, and left the shop. Now comes the practical part, Sophie announced. We're having a picnic in Central Park. A picnic? Yes. She was already walking energetically. I'm going to teach you how to enjoy the good things in life without spending a ton of money. They stopped at a deli where Sophie put together a basket with cheese, bread, fruit, and cold cuts, all within a tight budget. At the park, they found a quiet grassy spot near the lake. Sophie spread out an old blanket she'd brought in her bag and began arranging everything neatly. There, she said, sitting down. A king's dinner for under $40, including the wine. Tyler sat beside her, looking at the lake glowing in the late afternoon light. This is perfect, he said softly. Sophie opened the bottle of Prosecco skillfully and poured it into 2 plastic cups she had brought. Now, final lesson, she said, raising her cup. When you toast with someone special, you don't need crystal glasses or a 5-star restaurant. You just need a real moment. They toasted, their plastic cups making a soft thud. To real moments, Tyler said, looking straight into her eyes. To real moments, Sophie repeated, her heart racing. They ate, talked, and laughed as the sun slowly set. Tyler told made-up stories about his life before the lottery, and Sophie shared dreams about the bookstore cafe she wanted to open. It will have big, comfortable armchairs, she described excitedly, and a fireplace for winter, and shelves from floor to ceiling. And no one will be required to buy anything to stay there, because sometimes people just need a place to belong, you know? You're going to do it, Tyler said with certainty. I know you will. How can you be so sure? Because you're one of the most determined people I've ever met, he said, and generous, and smart. And he stopped, realizing he was saying too much. And what? Sophie asked quietly. Tyler looked at her, the golden sunset lighting her face, and he almost told her the truth. He almost said who he really was. But the fear of losing all this genuine connection, this perfect moment, stopped him. And inspiring, he finished, looking away. Sophie was silent for a moment, then lay back on the blanket, staring at the sky growing darker. You know, Tyler, you're an interesting person, she said thoughtfully. Interesting how? I can't explain. She turned her head to look at him. Sometimes you seem like you're hiding something, like a walking mystery. Tyler's heart sped up. Everyone has their secrets, he said, trying to sound casual. That's true, Sophie agreed. But I hope someday you trust me enough to tell me yours. Tyler lay beside her, looking at the stars beginning to appear. I trust you, he said honestly. More than you think. They lay there side by side, not touching but fully aware of each other's presence. Tyler's phone buzzed in his pocket, probably his assistant with some urgent matter. But he ignored it. In that moment, under the stars in Central Park, with a waitress who had a heart bigger than the whole world, Tyler Ashford realized something frightening. He was falling in love, and when she finally found out the truth, she would probably hate him forever. A week went by in a blur of laughter, learning, and moments Tyler knew he would remember for the rest of his life. Every day brought a new adventure with Sophie, from learning how to do laundry in a neighborhood laundromat to discovering the best food trucks in New York. The morning after the picnic, Sophie showed up at Tyler's hotel with a special mission. Today, she announced dramatically, you're going to learn the greatest urban survival skill, haggling at a street fair. Tyler laughed as he locked the hotel room door behind him. Haggling? Seriously? Seriously. Sophie was already dragging him down the hallway. It's a delicate art, requires charm, perfect timing, and just the right amount of boldness. They took the subway to the Lower East Side, where a street fair stretched for several blocks. Colorful stalls sold everything: clothes, jewelry, used books, vintage items. Okay, first rule, Sophie said, stopping in front of a scarf stall. Never accept the first price. Never. It's like a dance. They say something outrageous, you look shocked, they go down a little, you threaten to leave, they go down more. That works? Watch and learn from the master. Sophie approached the stall and picked up a blue silk scarf. How much is this? $25, the vendor said automatically. Sophie widened her eyes so dramatically that Tyler had to bite his lip not to laugh. 25? She repeated, as if the man had asked for a kidney. For a scarf? Are you sure it's not made of gold? It's pure silk, ma'am, the vendor said, though Tyler noticed the smile on his face. He probably already knew Sophie. Pure silk from China, mass-produced. Sophie said, checking the tag. I have $10. Will you take it? 10? Impossible. At least 20. 15, and I'll take 2. 18 for 2. 16, and we close the deal. The vendor pretended to think, then extended his hand. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Sophie. 16. Sophie paid triumphantly and handed one of the scarves to Tyler. There, we saved $18. That's enough to buy used books. Tyler completed, already catching on. Exactly. You're learning. They spent the whole morning at the fair. Sophie bargained with every vendor, always cheerful, always getting discounts. Tyler watched in amazement at how she turned every negotiation into a friendly conversation. At a stall of old books, Sophie stopped, her eyes shining. Oh, look at this. She grabbed a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. My favorite book in the whole world. You already have it? I have 3 copies, she admitted, running her fingers affectionately over the cover. But I never get tired of it. Jane Austen knew everything about second chances and true love. Tyler took the book from her hands. How much? He asked the vendor. $8. I'll take it, Tyler said before Sophie could protest. Tyler, you don't have to. I know, he smiled. But I want to. Consider it a gift from your worst student. I mean, best student. Sophie blushed, taking the book gently. Thank you, she said softly. When they left the fair, Tyler's hands were full of bags, books, a vintage scarf Sophie insisted matched him, and a $2 I Love NY mug. See? Sophie said excitedly. Successful shopping without going broke. You're officially ready to live like a normal person, thanks to the best teacher in the world, Tyler replied. They stopped at a food truck for lunch. Sophie ordered 2 tacos and 2 lemonades, paying with a coupon she apparently saved for all occasions. They sat on a bench, eating and watching people pass by. Can I ask you something? Tyler said after a moment. Sure. Why do you want so much to open a bookstore cafe? I mean, besides the obvious reason of it being a dream. Sophie chewed thoughtfully before answering. When I was little, my grandmother had a small bookstore. She began, her voice soft. It wasn't fancy, just a tiny shop in a quiet neighborhood, but it was magical. People walked in sad and walked out smiling, because she didn't just sell books, you know? She sold belonging. Tyler listened silently, moved by the emotion in her voice. When she passed away, the shop closed. I was 12, Sophie continued. And I promised myself that one day I'd make something like it again. A place where people can be themselves, where you don't have to pretend to be rich or important. You can just be human. Your grandmother would be proud of you, Tyler said sincerely. I hope so, Sophie smiled sadly. Sometimes I talk to her. I know it's silly, but it's not silly, Tyler interrupted. It's beautiful. Sophie looked at him, and in that moment, something passed between them. A quiet understanding, a connection deeper than words. Tyler's phone rang, breaking the moment. He glanced at the screen, assistant, flashing. For the 10th time that week, he ignored it. Aren't you going to answer? Sophie asked. It's not important. Tyler, she said in a warning tone, you've been ignoring calls all day. Every day. If it's someone important? Nothing is more important than being here, he said, and it was the absolute truth. Sophie opened her mouth to reply when a familiar voice called out. Sophie? Sophie Bennett? They turned and saw an elegant woman approaching. Perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothes, a smile straight out of a toothpaste commercial. Amanda? Sophie stood up, surprised. Oh my gosh, it's been ages. Years, the woman said, air kissing near Sophie's cheeks. You look, well, the way she said well clearly meant the opposite. I'm great, Sophie said, keeping her smile. And you? I heard you got married. Yes, to Jeremy, remember him? Amanda flashed a ring that probably cost more than Sophie's rent for the whole year. We're living in the Upper East Side now. He's the CEO of a tech startup. That's nice, Sophie said politely. And you? Amanda looked at Tyler with thinly disguised curiosity. Married? Engaged? Oh no, Sophie blushed. We're just friends. Tyler, this is Amanda. We went to school together. Nice to meet you. Tyler shook her hand, immediately recognizing her type, the type he dealt with daily in his business world. So you're still single? Amanda said with fake sympathy. And still working as, what was it again? A waitress? Yes, Sophie said, lifting her chin. At Café Mau Cute, Amanda said in a tone that was anything but sincere. Well, everyone has their path, right? I always knew you were more simple. Less ambitious. Tyler felt anger boil, but Sophie stayed calm. I actually have plenty of ambition, she said calmly. It just involves making a difference in people's lives, not just making money. Of course, Amanda waved a hand dismissively. Well, I have to go. Jeremy is waiting. It was interesting seeing you. And she left, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and condescension. Sophie stood still for a moment, then dropped onto the bench. Wow, she said with a humorless laugh. That was fun. She's awful, Tyler said bluntly. She always was, Sophie shrugged. But you know what's worse? Part of me still feels small. Less than, even though I know I'm not. You're worth 1,000 Amandas, Tyler said with heat. 100,000. She has money and fancy clothes, but you have something she'll never have. What's that? A real heart, kindness, the ability to make someone feel special without spending a dime. Tyler took her hand. You're extraordinary, Sophie. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Sophie looked at his hand holding hers, then at his face, and her eyes softened. Thank you, she whispered. They sat there, hands intertwined, and Tyler knew he was gone. Completely, hopelessly gone for this big-hearted waitress who saved coupons and believed in second chances. And when she found out he had lied about who he was, she would probably think he was no better than Amanda. The thought made his stomach twist. Come on, Sophie said suddenly, standing up. Let's get out of here. I know a place with the best ice cream in New York for $3. $3? $3, she grinned, her usual energy returning. And if you ask the right way, they give you extra topping for free. As they walked side by side down the street, Tyler made a decision. He was going to tell her the truth. Today, no matter what happened. But first, he was going to have the best $3 ice cream in New York. The ice cream really was delicious, and the lady at the cart added extra chocolate topping when Sophie asked with her charming smile. They walked through the park licking their cones like two kids, and Tyler felt the weight of the decision he had made. He was going to tell her the truth. Now, Sophie, he began, stopping near a fountain, I need to tell you something. Uh-oh, she made a funny face. That sounds serious. You're not going to tell me you're actually an alien, right? Because honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Not exactly, Tyler laughed nervously. But it's about... His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a string of messages from his assistant. Urgent. Investor meeting in 30 minutes. We need you now. Tyler looked at the screen, then at Sophie, who was finishing her ice cream absent-mindedly, completely unaware of the storm he was caught in. I'm sorry, he said, putting the phone away. It can wait. Are you sure? It sounded important. You're more important. Sophie smiled, and Tyler's heart tightened. How could he tell her? How could he explain that everything had been a lie? Actually, Sophie said suddenly, I need to show you something. Come with me? Before Tyler could protest, she was already pulling him by the hand. They took the subway and got off at a station Tyler didn't recognize. Sophie led him through narrow streets until they stopped in front of an old abandoned building. Here, she said, eyes shining. This is the place. The place for what? My bookstore cafe. Sophie pointed at the dusty, boarded-up storefront. I know it looks horrible now, but look at the size. And those huge windows. Imagine the morning light coming in. And over there, she pointed to the corner, it would be perfect for the fireplace. Tyler looked around. The building was in terrible shape, the neighborhood a bit run down, but he could see her vision, the potential. How much does it cost? Too much, Sophie sighed. The owner wants $200,000, plus renovations, initial stock, I'm talking at least $300,000 total. And how much do you have? Sophie made a face. $8,573.22. I've counted every coin. Tyler did the math. At her saving pace, it would take decades, but he could fix all of this with one phone call. One single call, and the building would be hers. The temptation hit him hard. I'll get there. Sophie said, mostly to herself. It may take time, but I'll get there. My grandmother always said, the best part of achieving something is the journey, not just the destination. Your grandmother was wise. She really was. Sophie leaned her forehead against the dirty storefront glass. Sometimes I come here just to feel it, to make the dream more real. Tyler stood beside her, looking through the glass at the empty space that someday would become something magical. Sophie. He tried again, about what I wanted to tell you. Oh, wait, she interrupted, checking her watch. "Oh no, I'm late. I promised Jessica I'd cover her shift tonight. Family emergency, but we'll talk later, okay?" Sophie was already running toward the subway. "Tomorrow? I have the whole day off tomorrow. We can spend the entire day together." And she disappeared into the station, leaving Tyler alone on the sidewalk, the confession trapped in his throat. He looked back at the abandoned building, imagining Sophie inside it, living her dream. Then he pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Mr. Ashford." The relieved voice answered. "Thank goodness. The investors are furious. The meeting. Cancel everything," Tyler said, "and I need you to do something for me." The next morning, Sophie woke to her phone ringing insistently. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered, still sleepy. "Miss Sophie Bennett?" a formal male voice asked. "Yes, this is David Patterson from Patterson Associates Law Office. I'm calling about the building on Maple Street, number 247. Sophie sat up straight, instantly awake. "The building? What about it?" "We received an anonymous purchase offer. $350,000, paid in full. The buyer has only one condition. The building must be transferred to you, Miss Bennett, for the symbolic price of $1. Sophie went silent. Then she started laughing. "Okay, what prank show is this? Did Jessica pay you to say that?" "This is not a prank, ma'am. It's a legitimate offer. The buyer wishes to remain anonymous, but was very clear about the terms. If you accept, you may come to our office today to sign the documents." Sophie hung up with trembling hands. She immediately called Tyler. "You won't believe what just happened," she said as soon as he answered. "I think someone's trying to give me the building. The building." "Tyler, this is insane. She kept talking, excited and confused at the same time, not realizing the heavy silence on the other end. Tyler knew he had made a mistake. A huge mistake. He had acted on impulse, trying to do something good, but never thought about the consequences. How would she react when she found out? Would she think he was trying to buy her? Control her? "Tyler, are you there?" Sophie asked. "I'm here," he said. "Sophie, about that. It's so crazy. Who would even do something like this?" She was practically shouting with excitement. "I mean, it must be a mistake, right? Or some billionaire lunatic who— Oh my gosh, Tyler, what if it's real?" "Sophie, I need to tell you." "Wait, someone's at the door," she interrupted. "I'll call you back, okay? I need to see what's going on." And she hung up. Tyler sat in the hotel room, holding his phone, knowing he had made everything even worse. He had tried to do something good, something generous, but now the lie had grown so big he no longer knew how to undo it. A few hours later, Sophie was at Café Magnifique, working the afternoon shift, still trying to process everything. She had called the lawyer again, confirmed it wasn't a joke, but refused to sign anything until she understood what was happening. She was serving coffee when someone placed a magazine on the table beside her. She walked past it casually, and her eyes landed on the cover. She froze. There, smiling on the cover of Forbes magazine, was Tyler. But not the Tyler she knew. This Tyler wore a flawless suit, was clean-shaven, hair perfectly styled, and the headline screamed, "Tyler Ashford, the billionaire behind the Café Magnifique empire." Sophie picked up the magazine with shaking hands. She read quickly. "Owner of 12 luxury cafes across the United States. Estimated net worth of $2.3 billion. Philanthropist known for anonymous donations." Anonymous donations. The building. Everything clicked painfully into place. The tray slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a crash that made the whole cafe fall silent. Cappuccinos spilled everywhere, cups shattered, and Sophie stood there, frozen, holding the magazine while her world fell apart. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Richard rushed over. "Sophie? What happened? Are you okay?" But she didn't hear him. Her eyes were glued to the photo of the man who had spent 2 weeks learning how to save money from her, the man who had let her pay for thrift store clothes, the man who owned the very cafe where she worked. The backpacker was her boss. The silence inside Café Magnifique was deafening. Customers stared at Sophie, who remained frozen in the middle of the room, gripping the magazine with trembling hands. Cappuccino trickled across the marble floor, making brown puddles around her feet. "Sophie?" Richard touched her shoulder gently. "You look pale. What happened?" She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the photo of Tyler Ashford on the cover. The confident smile, the perfectly tailored suit, the posture of someone used to running empires. Nothing like the lucky backpacker who had supposedly won the lottery. I need to go, Sophie said in a strange robotic voice. But your shift. I need to go, she screamed, startling everyone. She dropped the magazine on the counter, tore off her apron, and practically ran out the door. On the sidewalk, she tried to breathe, but the air felt too heavy to enter her lungs. A lie. Everything had been a lie. He had let her pay for his clothes, pretended he didn't know how to act in fancy places, eaten cheap meals and pretended $5 wine was a novelty. And worst, the absolute worst, was that she had fallen for him. Her phone rang. Tyler. Sophie hit reject so hard she nearly cracked the screen. It rang again. A third time. She turned the phone off completely. She walked aimlessly through New York, tears streaming down her face. People stepped aside, probably thinking she was just another city stranger having a rough day. Eventually, she found herself standing in front of the Maple Street building. Her building, or rather, the building a billionaire had tried to give her, like a consolation prize after lying to her face. Idiot, she muttered, not sure if she meant him or herself. She sat on the sidewalk, leaning back against the cold wall, and cried. Cried out of humiliation, anger, and the feeling of having been treated like someone's cute little social experiment. Let's see how long it takes for the poor waitress to believe me. She was so lost in her misery that she didn't notice when someone sat down beside her. You found out, didn't you? Sophie snapped her head up. Beside her sat an older woman with gray hair and a messy bun, simple but clean clothes, a gentle smile, and eyes that had clearly seen a lot of life. Excuse me? Sophie sniffed, wiping her tears. You're a mysterious billionaire, the woman said, pointing at the building. You found out who he really is. Sophie blinked, stunned. How did you? Honey, I've lived right across the street for 40 years. The woman gestured toward a building on the other side. I've seen you come here plenty of times, staring through the window like you were making a birthday wish. And yesterday, I saw a man in an expensive suit talking to the owner about buying the place. Not hard to put the pieces together. Sophie let out a humorless laugh. Seems like everyone knew but me. Rich men and their games, the woman sighed. My name is Dorothy, by the way. Sophie. Nice to meet you, Sophie the crybaby, Dorothy said with a mischievous smile that, despite everything, pulled a real laugh out of Sophie. Sorry, I don't usually cry on sidewalks. First time for everything, Dorothy shrugged. So, are you going to tell me the story, or do I have to guess the whole thing? And Sophie, without really knowing why, told her. She told her about the rainy day when Tyler walked into the cafe, about how she defended him, about the lessons, the picnics, the laughter, the connection she had felt. And it was all a lie. She finished, her voice breaking. He let me look like an idiot. Let me teach him things he probably knew better than I did. Let me pay for things when he could buy the whole block without even noticing. Dorothy stayed quiet for a moment, thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Sure. In the moments you two spent together, did you ever feel he was pretending? I mean, really pretending? Sophie opened her mouth to say yes, but stopped. She thought about Tyler's genuine laughter, the way he looked at her, the emotion in his voice when he said she was worth 100,000 Amandas. I don't know, she admitted softly. Look, I'm not defending the guy, Dorothy said. A lie is a lie, period. But sometimes people do stupid things for the right reasons. Doesn't make it right, but it does make it complicated. He lied to me. Yes, he did, Dorothy agreed. And you have every right to be furious. But when you're done being furious, it might be worth asking why. Why he did it. What he was looking for. Sophie had no answer for that. Dorothy stood up, brushing off her pants. Whatever you decide, crybaby girl, make sure it's your decision. Don't let anger decide for you. And don't let your heart do it alone, either. You've got a brain in the middle for a reason. With that little piece of wisdom, Dorothy crossed the street and disappeared into her building. Sophie stayed there a few more minutes, then stood and began walking home. When she turned her phone back on, she had 17 missed calls from Tyler and one message. Sophie, please, let me explain. Meet me, please. She typed and deleted 5 different replies before finally writing, Café Magnifique, tomorrow, 8 a.m. before opening. You owe me at least an honest explanation. The reply came instantly. I'll be there. Thank you. Sophie threw her phone in her bag and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Her roommates were in the living room, and one of them looked up, worried. "Sophie? Are you okay? You look like you got run over by a truck." "I feel like I did," she said, collapsing onto the couch. "Remember that guy I was helping? Tyler? The cute backpacker?" The other roommate asked. "He's not a backpacker. He's a billionaire, and the owner of the cafe where I work. And he lied about everything." Both roommates' eyes shot wide open. "What do you mean?" Sophie told the whole story again, and when she finished, one of them was nearly shouting in outrage. "That is unbelievable. Who does he think he is? Playing with your feelings like that? It's kind of romantic too, isn't it?" The other mused. "Like Cinderella, but reversed. It's not romantic. It's manipulation." "It can be both." As they argued, Sophie picked up the book Tyler had bought her at the market, Pride and Prejudice. She ran her fingers over the worn cover. She thought of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. How pride and misunderstandings almost destroyed their love. But in the end, honesty won. Would Tyler be honest tomorrow? Or would he come up with more lies? And more importantly, if he was honest, would she be able to forgive him? She didn't know. All she knew was that tomorrow morning she would have to look into the eyes of the man she had fallen for, and decide whether that man was real or just another fantasy carefully built. She fell asleep late, holding the book, dreaming of park picnics and $5 wine. The next morning, Sophie woke up with her stomach in knots. She chose a simple outfit, jeans and a white blouse, and didn't wear makeup. She wanted to be completely herself for that conversation. She arrived at Café Magnifique 10 minutes before 8. The place was empty, the lights still off. But Tyler was already there, waiting at the door. He looked different. Not in thrift store clothes, but not in a suit either. Dark jeans, a simple shirt, something between the backpacker and the billionaire. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept either. "Sophie," he said when she approached. "Tyler," she answered coldly. "Or should I call you Mr. Ashford?" "Tyler, please," he said, his voice rough. "I was always Tyler." "You were never Tyler," Sophie said. "Tyler was the lucky backpacker who won the lottery. You are someone else entirely." He opened the cafe door with a key. Of course he had a key. He owned the place, and motioned for her to go inside. Sophie walked in, arms crossed, every line of her body defensive. "So," she said, turning to face him, "explain." And this time, no lies. Tyler took a deep breath and began telling the truth. He stood in the middle of the empty cafe, hands in his pockets, clearly struggling to find the right words. Sophie stayed with her arms crossed, waiting. She had given him this chance, but she wasn't going to make it easy. "I was tired," Tyler finally said. "Tired of being treated like a walking wallet. Tired of not knowing whether people liked me or my money. Every conversation, every smile, every friendship, there was always a second intention behind it." Sophie said nothing, so he went on. "I decided to run a little test. I came to my own cafe dressed like someone with nothing, to see who actually had real kindness in them. And then you," he looked at her, "you defended me. You gave me coffee. You gave me money from your own pocket. And you thought it was fun?" Sophie asked, her voice sharp. "Making the poor waitress look like a fool?" Tyler stepped forward. "I never thought you were a fool. I thought you were extraordinary. And every moment we spent together only proved that." "Then why didn't you tell me the truth?" Sophie felt tears threatening again, but she forced them back. "You had 1,000 chances. At the picnic, when I showed you the building, I know." Tyler ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I tried. So many times. But every time I was about to tell you, you looked at me like that. And I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of watching that smile change into the fake smiles I get from everyone else when they find out who I am. So you chose to lie." "I chose to be a coward," Tyler admitted. "And it was selfish and wrong, and I'm sorry, more than you can imagine." Sophie walked to one of the tables and sat heavily. Tyler stayed standing, keeping his distance. "The building," Sophie said. "It was you. It wasn't a question," but Tyler answered anyway. "Yes. I wanted you to have what you deserve, your dream. It's not your place to give me my dreams." Sophie exploded, finally letting the anger out. "You stole the journey from me, the achievement. It was supposed to be mine, Tyler. Something I built, cent by cent with my own work, and you just threw money at it like you throw money at everything. I know it was wrong, no." Sophie stood. "You don't know. Because you've never had to work for anything in your life. You were born with everything, and now you spend 2 weeks pretending to be poor and think you understand? The words came out harsher than she meant, but they were true. Tyler stepped back as if she had slapped him. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't understand, but I learned. From you. I learned that happiness doesn't have a price. That $5 wine can be better than $1,000 champagne. That saving $8 can mean a whole week of small joys." He looked into her eyes. "You showed me a world I had forgotten existed, a world where people genuinely care, where kindness is worth more than money, and I fell in love with that world, and with you." Sophie felt her heart jump, but she shook her head. "You don't really know me." "Yes, I do," Tyler insisted. "I know you keep discount coupons in a yellow envelope. I know you sing while you cook and always get the lyrics wrong. I know you visit an abandoned building just to dream. I know you treat everyone with the same kindness from the CEO to the homeless man. And I know you have the most generous heart I've ever seen." "And what do I know about you?" Sophie asked. "Apparently nothing, because everything was a lie." "Not everything." Tyler took one careful step toward her. "The feelings were real. Every laugh, every moment, every time I looked at you and thought I had never met anyone so special. That was real." Sophie wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the pain was still there. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she said honestly. "I know," Tyler nodded. "And you shouldn't. Not right now. But I'm asking for a chance. One chance to prove that the Tyler you knew was real. He was just wearing the wrong clothes." Sophie stayed silent for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, she felt a laugh rising in her throat. "This is so ridiculous," she said, and the laugh came out half hysterical. "It's like a telenovela. The billionaire in disguise and the innocent waitress." Tyler blinked, surprised, but then a small smile appeared. "When you put it that way?" "It's absurd," Sophie went on, laughing more genuinely now. "I taught you how to use coupons." "Coupons?" "For a man who probably has a coupon assistant just to handle his coupons. Actually, I have 3 assistants," Tyler said, his smile growing. "But none of them specialize in coupons." "3 assistants," Sophie repeated, shaking her head. "My goodness, you must have thought it was all so funny. Look at the little waitress teaching me how to save $8 when I could buy the whole restaurant without thinking twice." "I didn't think it was funny," Tyler said seriously. "I thought it was humbling, in the best way. It made me realize how disconnected I had become from the real world." Sophie sat down again, emotionally drained. "I don't know what to do with all this, Tyler, or Tyler Ashford, or whoever you are." "I'm just Tyler," he said, sitting in the chair across from her, keeping the table between them. "Everything else is just circumstances. Circumstances worth $2.3 billion. Sophie muttered. "You read the whole magazine?" "I read every word," Sophie admitted. 3 times. Trying to find even one piece of the man I met. And you know what I found? A stranger in an expensive suit who donates money anonymously because he doesn't know how to connect with real people." Tyler flinched but didn't look away. "You're not wrong. I know," Sophie sighed. "And that's the saddest part, because the Tyler I got to know, I liked him. A lot. But that Tyler doesn't even exist, does he?" "He does." Tyler placed his hand on the table, stopping just inches from hers. "He was just buried under years of walls and defenses. You helped me find him again." Sophie looked at his hand, so close, yet still so far. "I need time," she finally said. "I need to process all of this, figure out if I can separate the lie from the truth." "How much time do you need?" "I don't know." Sophie stood. "But you need to respect it. No calls, no messages, no accidentally running into me. And definitely no buying more buildings." Tyler stood too. "And the building? What are you going to do?" "I'm turning it down," Sophie said firmly. "When I finally open my bookstore cafe, it'll be because I earned it, not because a guilty billionaire threw money at the problem." "Sophie." "That's it, Tyler." She walked toward the door. "I need to go." "Wait," he called. Sophie stopped, but didn't turn around. "Just one more thing. Those $5 you gave me on the first day. I still have them. I carried them with me every day. Because they reminded me there are still good people in the world." Sophie felt tears overflow. "Welcome to the real world, billionaire," she said without turning. "Here, we really get hurt. And she left, leaving Tyler alone in the empty cafe, holding a crumpled $5 bill and a broken heart. Outside, Sophie leaned against the wall and cried. Cried from confusion, anger, sadness, and something she couldn't name. Because despite everything, a tiny, stubborn part of her still wanted to believe that the kind-eyed backpacker had been real, even knowing she'd probably never see him again. 2 weeks dragged by like 2 years. Sophie returned to work at Café Magnifique because, well, bills needed to be paid. Richard was confused by the whole Tyler Ashford situation, but he had direct orders from the owner himself that Sophie should be treated exactly the same. No special treatment, no favoritism. It was strange, working while knowing Tyler technically owned the place. But he didn't show up. Not once. He kept his promise to give her space. And for some irritating reason, that made Sophie respect him a tiny bit more. "Are you okay?" Jessica asked one afternoon as they arranged the cups. "You seem distant. Just thinking," Sophie answered vaguely. "About the billionaire? About everything," Sophie sighed. "About what's real and what isn't, about whether I'm being too proud or just protecting myself." "Those are deep questions for a Tuesday," Jessica said. "You need cheap wine and philosophical conversation?" Sophie laughed for the first time in days. "Maybe." That night, walking home, her phone rang. Another unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello, Miss Bennett? This is Thomas Wright from New York Trust Bank." Sophie stopped mid-sidewalk. "Yes, I'm calling to inform you that an account has been opened in your name with a significant initial deposit. I'd like to schedule a meeting to go over the details." Sophie's blood boiled. "How much?" $300,000, ma'am. "Did Tyler Ashford make that deposit?" There was a pause. "I cannot disclose the depositor's identity, but cancel it," Sophie said firmly. "Cancel the account. Return the money." "I don't want it." "But ma'am, I said I don't want it." She hung up hard and immediately called Tyler. He picked up on the first ring. "Sophie, you promised," she practically shouted. "You promised to give me space, and now I find out you put $300,000 in an account under my name?" "It wasn't me," Tyler said calmly. "Don't lie to me again." "I'm not lying," he insisted. "Sophie, I swear on my life it wasn't me. I wouldn't do that after you made it clear you wanted to earn things on your own." Sophie stopped, confused. "Then who?" "I don't know," Tyler said. "But I'll find out. Give me a few minutes." He hung up, leaving Sophie standing on the sidewalk, completely lost. 15 minutes later, he called back. "I know who it was," he said. "It was my father." "Your father?" "He read about us in a gossip magazine." Tyler explained with a weary sigh. "Apparently someone took a photo of us at the park and sold it, and my father, in his typical way, decided to fix things by throwing money at the problem." "You can tell him?" "I already did." Tyler cut in. "Told him to cancel everything. I explained you don't want charity and that he has no right to interfere in your life. He didn't like it, but he'll respect it." Sophie felt her anger ease a little. "Thank you." "You're welcome, Sophie?" Tyler hesitated. "Are you okay?" It was their first real conversation in 2 weeks, and Sophie realized how much she had missed his voice. "I'm surviving," she admitted. "And you?" "Same." They stayed silent for a moment. Then Sophie said, "I need to go. But thanks for fixing that." "Always," Tyler said softly. Sophie hung up and leaned against a wall, trying to process everything. Life had gotten so complicated. The next day, Sophie was serving tables when she saw someone familiar walk into the cafe. It took her a moment to recognize her. Amanda, the former classmate who had been so condescending. Sophie considered hiding in the kitchen, but decided to hold her head high. It was just another customer. "Hi, Amanda," she said politely as she reached the table. "What can I get you?" Amanda looked up, and Sophie noticed her eyes were red. "Sophie," Amanda said, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you." "I'm working." "Please," Amanda interrupted. "Just 5 minutes." Sophie glanced around. The cafe was pretty empty. She sat down reluctantly. 5 minutes. Amanda took a deep breath. "I saw that photo of you with Tyler Ashford. It's everywhere. And she paused, tears spilling. "I'm sorry for how awful I was to you the other day." Sophie blinked, stunned. "Okay, my life isn't what it looks like," Amanda continued. "Jeremy, my husband, he's cheating on me with his assistant. The Upper East Side apartment, rented, and we're 3 months behind. His startup, it went under last week." "Amanda, I'm you." Amanda cut her off. "You were being genuine, living your life honestly. And I treated you like trash because I was jealous, because you have something I never had. What? Integrity, Amanda said simply. You're real, Sophie, and I've spent so long pretending to be someone else that I forgot who I actually am. Sophie sat in silence, processing the unexpected honesty. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything, Amanda wiped her tears. I just wanted you to know, and to apologize for real. You were always better than me. She stood to leave, but Sophie gently grabbed her wrist. Wait. Sit. I'll get you a coffee, on the house. Amanda stared at her. Why? Because we used to be friends once, Sophie said with a small smile. And because everyone deserves a second chance. Even the Amandas of the world. Half an hour later, the two were talking like they hadn't in years. Amanda shared how her marriage was falling apart. Sophie shared the chaos with Tyler. By the end, they had exchanged numbers again. Thank you, Amanda said as she stood to leave, for not hating me. Hate takes too much work, Sophie shrugged. I prefer saving my energy for better things. That night, Sophie was at home when her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number with a video link. Curious, she clicked. Her stomach dropped. It was the video from the cafe 2 weeks earlier, the exact moment she dropped the tray when she saw the magazine. Someone had filmed it and posted it on TikTok with the caption, Waitress teaches billionaire how to be poor and causes chaos at Café Magnifique. The video had 3 million views. 3 million. The comments were a mix of support, go girl, he deserved it, and cruelty. She was obviously just after his money. Some were funny. Those cappuccinos died as heroes, others hurtful. Sophie felt sick. The next morning, when she arrived at the cafe, Richard was waiting at the door. The look on his face said everything. Sophie, he said awkwardly. We need to talk. I know, she replied, her voice flat. I'm fired. It wasn't my decision, Richard rushed to say. It came from corporate. The video, it's causing a lot of noise. They think it would be better for everyone if... I understand, Sophie said, handing him her apron. No problem. It was a lie. It was every problem in the world. But she wasn't going to cry in front of Richard. She went home, climbed the stairs to her apartment, closed the door, and finally let the tears come. She had lost her job, gone viral for the wrong reasons, and the man she'd fallen for had lied to her. Sophie Bennett had officially hit rock bottom. But what she didn't know was that sometimes when you reach the bottom, the only direction left is up. For 3 days, Sophie stayed in her pajamas, eating ice cream straight from the tub and watching old reruns. Her roommates tried to cheer her up, but she was determined to fully live out her moment of self-pity. On the 4th day, she woke up to someone knocking insistently at the door. Go away, she yelled from the couch. The knocking continued, louder. Sophie Bennett, open this door right now or I will kick it down, a woman's voice shouted. Sophie frowned. She knew that voice. She dragged herself to the door and opened it. Dorothy, the neighbor from Maple Street, was standing there with her hands on her hips and an expression that would accept no excuses. How did you even find out where I live? Sophie asked, very aware she looked like someone who had cried for 3 days straight. I have my ways, Dorothy said, pushing the door open and walking in. Good Lord, what is that smell? Did you die and forget to tell me? I'm having a moment, Sophie muttered. You're having a self-pity crisis. Dorothy corrected, opening the windows. And it's gone on long enough. Get up, shower, get dressed. We have work to do. What work? I'm unemployed, remember? Exactly, Dorothy crossed her arms. We're finding you a job. Move it. 20 minutes later, Sophie was dressed and somewhat presentable, being marched through New York by Dorothy. Where are we going? To a place that needs someone with your talent, Dorothy said mysteriously. They stopped in front of a tiny cafe in Brooklyn. The sign read, Java Dreams, and the windows were covered with Help Wanted notices. Here? Sophie asked. The owner is my niece, Dorothy explained. The cafe's struggling, the last waitress quit without warning, and she's desperate. Go in and show what you can do. Sophie hesitated, but Dorothy practically shoved her through the door. The cafe was tiny, only 6 tables, but it had a warm, cozy charm. A young red-haired woman stood behind the counter, looking completely overwhelmed. Aunt Dorothy, she said in surprise. What are you doing here? I brought you a candidate. Dorothy pushed Sophie forward. This is Sophie, best waitress in New York. Sophie, this is my niece Rachel. Rachel looked Sophie up and down. Do you have experience? 3 years at Magnifique, Sophie replied. The fancy place in Manhattan? Rachel's eyes widened. Why do you want to work here? We pay next to nothing. Because, Sophie paused, thinking. Why did she want to? Then she realized. Because small places have soul, and I'd rather have soul than a big paycheck. Rachel smiled. You're hired. When can you start? Now? Perfect. The apron is over there. And just like that, Sophie was working again. Java Dreams was nothing like Café Magnifique. It didn't have crystal chandeliers or customers in expensive suits, but it had something better. Heart. The customers were neighbors who came every day. They knew each other by name. They left generous tips even when they could barely afford it. And they treated Sophie like family from day one. A week later, Sophie was serving coffee when someone walked in who made her heart stop. Tyler. He was dressed simply, jeans and a t-shirt, and he looked nervous. Hi, he said when Sophie approached. Hi, she answered, gripping the tray so her hands wouldn't shake. What are you doing here? I heard they serve the best coffee in Brooklyn, Tyler said with a small smile. Thought I'd test it out. Tyler. I know, he raised his hands. You asked for space, but technically, you said no calls and no messages. You didn't say anything about not being a customer. Sophie couldn't help the little smile that escaped. Technically correct is the worst kind of correct. Learned from the best teacher, Tyler said, taking a seat in the corner. So, can I order a coffee? Sophie sighed but pulled out her notepad. What would you like? The cheapest thing on the menu, Tyler said, with a slice of that cake in the display. And, he hesitated, your company? If you have 5 minutes, Sophie looked around. The cafe was empty, except for an older man reading a newspaper in the corner. 5 minutes, she agreed. She served the coffee and cake, then sat across from him. How did you find me? Dorothy, Tyler admitted. She called me, said you were okay, but that I'd be an idiot if I didn't at least try. Dorothy is very nosy. Dorothy is very wise, Tyler corrected. He took a sip of the coffee and made an exaggerated face. Wow, this is terrible. Sophie laughed for the first time in weeks. It's the cheapest coffee. What did you expect? I expected lessons on how to appreciate cheap things, Tyler said with a smile. But I think this one is beyond saving. Rachel shouted from the kitchen. I heard that. Sophie covered her mouth, laughing. You're going to get us shut down on your first day. Sorry, Tyler yelled back. The cake is delicious. Better, Rachel replied. Tyler looked back at Sophie, and his expression softened. I missed you, he said quietly. A lot. I missed you too, Sophie admitted. But that doesn't change what happened. I know, Tyler nodded. And I'm not here to ask you to take me back. I'm here because, he took a breath, because I learned something important from you, and I wanted you to know. What? I learned that the world I built around myself was fake, Tyler said, full of people who only wanted me for my money. I was so used to it that I forgot there was another way to live. He took her hand across the table. You showed me there's real kindness. Real connection, that a picnic in the park can mean more than $1,000 dinner. And I changed, because of you. Sophie felt her eyes burn. Tyler, let me finish, he asked. Since we've been apart, I donated half my fortune. I'm opening community centers in low-income neighborhoods. I changed the policies at Café Magnifique. Now every employee earns a fair wage and gets profit sharing. And you know what else? What? I had a new sentence printed on the front of all my cafes. Tyler said with a small smile. A sentence I learned from a certain wise waitress. What sentence? Luxury is in how we treat people, not in what we have. A tear rolled down Sophie's cheek. You did that? I did. Because it was true. Tyler squeezed her hand, and because I wanted to honor the person who taught me that. Even if she never forgives me, I want her to know she changed my life forever. Sophie stayed quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Can I ask you an honest question? Anything. If we had met normally, you rich, me a waitress, would you have given me a chance? Or would you have ignored me like all the other customers do? Tyler thought seriously before answering. Honestly, I probably would have ignored you because I was blind to what truly matters. But now, he looked directly into her eyes. Now I would see you, the real you, and I would fall for you the same way. How can you be sure? Because I already did, Tyler said simply. I fell for the real you, the Sophie who keeps coupons, dreams big, and treats everyone with kindness. The clothes I wore were different, but my feelings were real. Sophie pulled her hand back and wiped her tears. I need more time, she said, to be sure, to trust again. How much time do you need? I don't know. Then I'll wait. Tyler stood. I'll come here every day. I'll order terrible coffee and delicious cake. And when you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be here. He left $20 on the table for a $5 bill and walked out. Sophie sat there holding the bill, and she realized something important. Maybe she was ready to forgive. Maybe she already had. Tyler kept his promise. Every day at 3 in the afternoon, he walked into Java Dreams, ordered the same terrible coffee and the same piece of cake, and talked with Sophie during her breaks. He never pushed, never asked for anything more than her company. And every day, Sophie felt the walls around her heart melt a little more. 3 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon, Sophie was wiping tables when Tyler came in as always. But this time, he had something in his hands. Hi, he said, placing an envelope on the counter. I have something for you. Sophie looked suspicious. If it's money, I swear I'll throw hot coffee at you. Tyler laughed. It's not money. It's better. Open it. Sophie opened the envelope carefully. Inside were official documents. It took her a few seconds to understand what she was reading. They were property papers for the Maple Street building. In her name. Tyler, she began, anger rising again. Wait. He raised his hands. Before you kill me, let me explain. You earned this. What do you mean I earned it? Remember that video that went viral? Tyler smiled. 3 million views. Well, I contacted the platform. Technically, you have the right to the advertising profits from any content that uses your image without permission. Sophie blinked. What? Image monetization, Tyler explained. The video showed you used your name and made money from it. You were legally entitled to part of that profit, so I filed a claim on your behalf, and the settlement was $320,000. Sophie dropped into a chair. Is this real? Completely. Tyler pushed the papers toward her. It's your money, earned legally. I just handled the paperwork, and I used it to buy the building you wanted, in your name. Because you deserve to make your dream real. Sophie looked at the papers, then at Tyler, then back at the papers again. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Tyler asked. Say you're going to open that bookstore cafe. Say you'll make it happen. Tears rolled down Sophie's cheeks. But the renovations, the inventory, I still need so much money. Then get a loan, Tyler said. As a business owner, as a property owner, banks will take you seriously now, and you'll build this your way with your own hands. You did all this for me? I did it because it was right, Tyler said gently. And because I love you. And when you love someone truly, you help them reach their dreams. You don't buy the dreams for them. Sophie wiped her tears, looking at the man who had walked into her life as a lost backpacker and turned out to be so much more. I forgive you, she said suddenly. Tyler froze. What? I forgive you, Sophie repeated, standing. For the lie, for the deception, for everything. Because you changed, and because I changed too, and because life is too short to waste on pride. Sophie, and I love you too, she said, the words rushing out. I love the backpacker, I love the billionaire, I love the Tyler who eats cheap carbonara and the Tyler who donates half his fortune. I love every version of you. Because deep down, you're just you. Tyler crossed the cafe in 3 long steps and kissed her. It was a kiss filled with weeks of longing, regret, forgiveness, and true love. When they pulled apart, both were smiling and crying at the same time. Marry me, Tyler said suddenly. Sophie laughed, still in his arms. Is that a proposal or a command? It's a desperate proposal from a man who doesn't want to spend another day without you. Then my answer is yes, Sophie said. But with one condition, anything. No millionaire wedding, Sophie said firmly. I want something simple, real, with the people who actually matter. Done. Tyler agreed instantly. Rachel, who had been watching from the kitchen, started clapping. The older man in the corner clapped too, and suddenly the whole little cafe was celebrating. 6 months later, on a sunny spring morning, Sophie Bennett married Tyler Ashford. The ceremony took place inside Café Magnifique, but not the Café Magnifique Tyler had built. Sophie had helped redesign it completely. It was still elegant, but now it was warm, cozy, with comfortable chairs, bookshelves, and honest prices on the menu. And on the front sign, in golden letters, shone the cafe's new philosophy. Luxury is in how we treat people, not in what we have. Sophie looked beautiful in a simple white lace dress, holding a bouquet of daisies. Tyler wore a suit, but insisted on wearing the same worn-out sneakers he had on the day they met. To remember where we started, he explained. The guests were a perfect mix. Dorothy sitting next to Tyler's billionaire father. Rachel chatting with Jessica. Amanda was there with her new boyfriend, a public school teacher who loved her for real. Mrs. Giulietta had baked the wedding cake. Mr. Benedetti brought the wine, all under $10 as Sophie demanded. The officiant led the ceremony with warmth and simplicity. When it was time for the vows, Sophie spoke first. Tyler, when you walked into that cafe soaking wet, I thought I was saving a stranger. But really, you were saving me. Showing me that kindness still exists, that true love still exists, and that sometimes the best stories begin with the most unlikely meetings. I promise to love you on champagne days and $5 coffee days, in moments of luxury and moments of simplicity, because in the end, you are my real luxury. Tyler wiped a tear before speaking. Sophie, you taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in moments, in shared laughter, in simple meals, in small acts of kindness. You gave me something no amount of money could ever buy, a genuine heart and true love. I promise to spend every day showing you that the man you taught how to truly live is the real man, and that this man loves you more than words can say. When they kissed, the entire cafe burst into applause. At the reception, Sophie looked around and felt a deep, warm gratitude. Her bookstore cafe was almost ready. It would open in 2 months. Tyler had insisted on helping with the renovations, but only as a regular volunteer, carrying boxes and painting walls. What are you thinking about? Tyler asked, bringing 2 glasses of $9 Prosecco. That life is funny, Sophie said, taking the glass. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd marry a billionaire, I would have laughed in their face. And if someone had told me I'd fall in love with a waitress who handed me $5 out of kindness, I would have thought it was impossible, Tyler said with a smile. But here we are. Here we are, Sophie repeated, toasting. 2 fools in love who learn that the real luxury is finding someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you have. You sound like a philosopher. I learned from a very wise lady on a sidewalk, Sophie said with a playful wink. They danced all afternoon, ate a 3-tier cake made with love, and laughed until their cheeks hurt. When the sun began to set, Tyler led Sophie to the window. Look, he said, pointing outside. A moving van was parked on the street. Painted on the side, in neat, charming letters, it read, Sophie's Books and Brew, where everyone is welcome. It arrived this morning, Tyler explained. Your last wedding gift. From me to the woman who changed my life. Sophie looked at the sign, then at the man who once walked into her life in disguise and understood something essential. It didn't matter if he was a billionaire or a backpacker, rich or broke. What mattered was that he was Tyler, her Tyler, and she was Sophie, herself. Thank you, she said, kissing him softly. For everything. Thank you, Tyler answered, for teaching me how to truly live. And there, in the cafe where everything had begun, Sophie Bennett, now Sophie Ashford, realized she had achieved everything she ever hoped for. Not because a billionaire gave it to her, but because she fought for it, dreamed it, forgave, and loved with her whole heart. And in the end, that was the only kind of wealth that truly mattered. On the new cafe facade, the lights turned on, shining over the phrase that now defined not just a business, but an entire life. Luxury is in how we treat people, not in what we have. And here, everyone is welcome, even billionaire backpackers. What did you think of Sophie and Tyler's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And don't forget to check out more emotional stories on the final screen.